And the wider aspect at the farm level is that we're going to look at the impact of using straw for bioenergy. We'll look at what might happen if they grow what are called dedicated biomass crops, so tall grasses, small trees that you can use for energy. Because if they do that, we'll have less land being used to grow food. So we're going to look at some of the food versus fuel impacts as well. Okay, so this is a screenshot of an example of something that we're taking to cereals, which is a big exhibition where farmers go to find out lots about what's happening in the industry. And this is the front end of an example model, and we're going to take this to cereals, and it's just an example where farmers can say, okay, well, I grow 100 hectares of this, 100 hectares of something else. We'll set this model off to calculate how much energy that will give them from a farm, how much profit it would give them, and they can play around with this and actually see what trade-offs, as in if I grow more energy, do I lose more money? If I optimize for money, how much energy do I get out? And they can measure the trade-offs between these things. That's just the front end of a very complicated model. And that's, as I say, that's sort of a playing version that we're going to take for farmers to play with. So the final aspect of the bioenergy programme that Nottingham is leading in this part are the social and ethical aspects. So this is looking at the wider dimensions, really. This is just a quote from the Sunday Times back in 2008 about biofuels, because this is part of the controversy about it, in that it's been blamed for using up food stock, but biofuels are now being used from otherwise waste material, effectively. So the current technology of biofuels is about using, as Greg said, it's about using corn or maize, and it's using, effectively, food products. And that's the first generation biofuels. The second generation that we're looking at is about using more waste products. So what does it involve, and why are we doing it? Well, broadly speaking, any new technology can raise particular issues, uncertainties about whether it will work. Is there environmental damage? Genetic modification is a classic example of people being concerned about what might happen if you eat something that's been genetically modified. What are the uncertainties of that? What might happen in the environment? So there are uncertainties about technologies, and there are also conflicts that people might be concerned about, particularly in a world that's running out of food, and the food versus fuel debate is a key part of that. I should say this is being led by Kate Miller's involved in this theme with a colleague, Sujatha Raman from University Park. So this is all about understanding the views of society in terms of what bioenergy is about. So they'll be learning about new technologies, looking back at old technologies as well. They'll be doing this by talking to people, analysing interviews, looking back at previous debates about new technologies and how that might work and how people might view them. And it's because you get this uncertainty and it leads to these challenges, these opportunities. This is called ethical reflection, and it's all about the acceptability of the technology. And part of what they're doing is they're going to be doing this throughout the process. So we're not going to get to the end of the 5 years and then suddenly think, is this process acceptable to society? It's much more about talking to people throughout the process, and if there are concerns that society has, can we, as the scientists in the programme, change what we're doing to overcome those concerns? And it's really about stimulating the dialogue in terms of what people's expectations are, what their concerns are, what their issues are in relation to all of this new technology. Okay, so that's broadly what we're doing in LACE here at Nottingham. I think I'm right, Greg, in saying that we've probably got the most money out of the BBSRC programme. Is that broadly correct? It's probably one of the biggest of the programmes.
Probably equal with Rothers.
Okay.
Rothers and Rothers. If you add our second programme.
Definitely. Okay. So I'm not going to go through these for two reasons. One, you need your lunch. Secondly, I don't know enough about them to tell you much. So Nottingham's got another programme led by Nigel Minton, And this is looking at bacteria effectively, so using bacteria to generate biofuels. Rothamsted, who a lot of you will have heard of, they are looking at perennial biomass, and this is effectively dedicated biomass crops. Small trees, short rotation coppice it's called, or miscanthus, which I think is huge grass. So that's what they're looking at, and they're looking at optimising the production of that. My concern with that type of approach is that you get into the food versus fuel debate because you're using land to grow dedicated crops. Cambridge are looking at a programme that's looking at breaking down the cell wall sugars, I think, broadly speaking. So there's some crossover between some of these programmes. University of Dundee and colleagues are looking at the lignin, which is the stuff that makes this stand up. They're looking at breaking this down. So can you make the lignin in here, or can you make the cell walls easier to deconstruct, in a nutshell? That's what they're looking at. But the most exciting one for me, that I learned about at the early part of this month, is what York are leading on, which are marine wood borer enzyme discovery program, where they've got these little bugs, they're 2 millimeters long, and within these little bugs, they've got these enzymes that effectively live on wood, and they break down the wood to convert it into sugars to live, I suspect.
Yeah, it's called a gribble.
A gribble. Yes. And it's fascinating because they're looking at something that's in nature. It's exceptionally small. It's got enzymes in its gut, and they think we can harness this to produce biofuels. So I was kind of surprised by that. So that's broadly what's happening in the other programs. And with that, I'm going to finish. But if you do want to learn more about the program, there's an awful lot of information on our website, which is /bioenergy/LACE. There are many, many people involved in Nottingham on this programme. So I would encourage you to go and have a look at that and get engaged with us in terms of learning more about it. If you want to ask questions, I'm sure Greg and I would be more than happy to try and answer any, or you can grab us at lunch. And just to reiterate what Jerry was saying, the next one of these talks, which we're hoping is going to be a series of talks, is going to be on global food security. Jerry has offered to say something within it. So next time you can actually hear from Jerry as well. Okay, I think with that I'll finish, and we can answer any questions or we can have lunch.